Good evening, Facebook. It
Hello,
is time
hello.
for Freology Friday. And I'm Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson.
And before we get too far down the path, man, what is in the glass tonight?
I am just drinking a Merlot. I don't even
Okay,
remember the brand. I don't know. It's something I bought. Don't remember what it is. And the
got you.
bottle's not in ice.
As for me, in this pretty little container here, I have a Moscow Mule that's made with Q ginger beer, not to be confused with QAnon. I'm not on that Kool-Aid. Some lime juice and some vodka.
Ah,
That is what is in the glass tonight. And
oh, right there.
yep. And so you guys stay tuned because eventually there's going to be a Freology mixology book
Yeah.
for all these cocktails that we do.
Yeah, and eventually we'll get together if I can ever get my shit together.
Well, I mean,
No,
you
I
you
didn't
got
I didn't plan on being out a month.
yeah. Well, you got to get better first. You got to recover from
Yeah,
vacation and all of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So yeah, man. So as soon as you're better, we're gonna make it happen because people sowed so liberally into our message here
Yeah, I
that
know. I don't want to leave them disappointed. So
yeah
it's on my end, everybody. It's not on Derek's end. It's entirely on mine.
yeah.
It's been a crazy, Derek, and you know all the stuff, but just thinking about it overall, taking a bird's eye view of this last year, and I have to say, it's probably been one of the most challenging years of my life.
Wow.
Honestly, it's just been one challenge after another. Nothing major, bad, no major illnesses, nobody's dying, nobody died, but just life, man, just throwing so many things at me all at once. It's been crazy.
Well, you know what? I can say the same. Although knowing the situation, mine hasn't been nearly as challenging as yours. But I've had some significant changes that have happened in my life in this year,
Yeah,
and some professional challenges and personal challenges but I'm happy to say that we talked last week about finding happiness, and dude, I'm happy. So
that's awesome.
in spite of everything that's going on, I'm happy. I've found my happiness. I found my happy place.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you have had some people close to you die this year, so
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
had a challenging year as well.
So with that being said, we've talked about what's in the glass, and I believe that this is something that you chose as a topic. So
Yeah,
I'm going to kick it over to you to tee it up and swat it out.
yeah, yeah. So, I was talking with someone today who, very interesting individual that I know, and she, for whatever reason, when she was a teenager, became very interested in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and turmoil over there in the Mideast.
Mhm.
And so, she was telling me she's read many, many books over the years on the issues that are going on over there, and she's just amazed how people on Facebook and social media have suddenly become experts in geopolitics. And it cracks me up, Derek. And this leads into what we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk about that, but it's part of it. And it cracks me up. The pandemic happens and people overnight become experts in infectious disease and vaccines. And then, now we're dealing with this situation in the Middle East, which is very complicated. Let's be honest. It's a complicated issue. But everybody just jumps on board but here's the thing, everybody is so convinced that they're right, and so therefore any differing viewpoint cannot hold equal merit, and we end up in these binary I'm right, you're wrong kind of scenarios in the way that we think, the way that we approach things. And one of the things that's so disappointing to me about where our society is today is we do this in conversation and we do this in dialogue or discussion with each other. And so what I wanted to talk about, because I one of the things I love, maybe the thing I love the most Well, I wouldn't go that far. That's maybe hyperbole. But one of the things I love about our relationship, Derek, and our show that we do, but the conversations that we have in between shows, after shows, is that we have genuine dialogue. And dialogue, the word itself,
Hmm.
implies an exchange of ideas. Discussion, on the other hand, I think is something very different. And I don't think that very many people have genuine dialogue in this culture, meaning a genuine exchange of ideas. I think that we have discussions, meaning I'm talking to you to persuade you or convince myself that I'm right and you're wrong.
Exactly.
And I was thinking about this today. I've been thinking about this a lot this week, and there's many different directions I want to go with it. But Stephen Covey, he wrote the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of his seven habits of highly effective people is seeking to understand before you seek to be understood.
Mm.
And I would like to see more of us practicing that. I would like to get better at that myself. That I don't have to agree with you, and I'm not saying you, Derek, but just in general, anybody. I don't have to agree with you. I can completely disagree with you. You can be a far right Trump supporter. There's probably not any person on the planet that I would be more disagreeable towards right now. But that does not mean that I cannot seek to understand you. Seek to understand, why do you think that way? Where are you coming from? Take time to step outside of my bubble, my paradigm, my internal dialogue, my belief system, and look at it from your point of view and to understand where you're coming from. That's real dialogue. Discussion, on the other hand, seeks to be understood and does not even seek to understand. So it doesn't even get reversed. It doesn't go from seek to understand before you seek to be understood. It doesn't go to seek to be understood before you seek to be before you seek to understand.
Right.
It goes to I'm going to be understood and I'm not even going to worry about understanding. And so when people are talking, instead of really having this exchange of ideas and dialogue happening, we're sitting there crafting our counterpoint
Yep.
while before the other person has even finished talking. And then as soon as they finish talking, we go at it with our counterpoint. And I don't know why that is. It'd be interesting to look at the psychology behind that. And so before I kick it over to you, I'll give you another example of how this works. There's a group of people that we used to hang out with when we were, you know what? I'm not going to say that because I just gave away some identifying information. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you.
You know what? When you proposed this subject, I had to actually, one of the things that, and you and I both do this, that when one of us has a subject that the other doesn't, really know a lot about,
Yeah.
you go back and you do a little homework, right?
Right.
Because, I mean, you're a smart guy, and so I want to make sure I'm complimenting you here, and not sounding like a complete dork. So I went and did a little homework, and so you brought out the points, the nuance between discussion and dialogue,
Yeah.
and what I learned was that in a lot of cases and especially in social media, that you find people that they're not really dialoguing. That dialogue is not what they want. Basically, they want to work on the sliding scale between discussion and debate,
There you go.
right?
There you go.
And so they're on that rheostat. And what I took away from it in the time that I studied prior to the show is that I said, okay, I know I don't debate with people,
Hmm.
but I try to discuss because I'm trying to convey a point.
Hmm.
And the reality is, in a lot of cases, I'm not looking to understand. Now let me caveat that with this, that when it's something that I genuinely don't know, that
Right.
I don't have exposure to, or that I know that I have a blind side on,
Hmm.
even if it's something that I particularly dislike. I mean, even up to the point of finding it abhorrent, I'm gonna dialogue because I see an opportunity for learning. So it's seeking to understand, right? But what I won't do is try to dialogue with someone who's coming from a point that I know intimately.
Hmm.
Because if I've already been there,
Hmm.
I'm not going back to my vomit. See,
Hmm.
so that trying to dialogue, trying to forge a dialogue
Hmm.
with something that I've already passed by.
Hmm.
I'm not doing that. Matter of fact, I'm not even discussing that.
Hmm.
Right. At that and then the other thing too is that when you look at the difference between dialogue and discussion, there has to be a metric of intellectual honesty there. Because if you're coming at this from the point of, okay, this is really how I feel, this is what I think, and this is what I'm trying to this is what I'm trying to share, or I'm trying to understand your point relative to what my train of thought is. But there are some people that they try to proselytize
Yeah.
or convert
Yeah.
and do it through subterfuge. Now that to me, that's intellectual dishonesty. You know, and when you come at it from a standpoint of intellectual dishonesty, where okay, I'm couching this as if I'm trying to dialogue with you, but I'm really trying to, to either downplay your point or to steamroll your thought with mine. And I've gotten good at this. I can detect that like a fart in a car. And when I see it, I'm just like, okay, this conversation is essentially over. Now, at this point, I'm going to shut the conversation down and hopefully that it lands gracefully,
Hmm.
right? But if you keep on going, I'm going to crash that bitch into the ground.
Hmm.
I'm not going to have this conversation. I'm just going to done, right?
Hmm.
And so I've gone through that a lot this week, with people on social media. It's like, they try to soft pedal their position, but in reality, they're trying to steamroll, your opinion. So I say this to say that dialogue, I'm all for it, especially when there's a legitimate blind spot. So like you were talking about is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I'm just going to say this about that. This is the only thing I'm going to say about that is that in this conflict, there's a lot made about Hamas and how Hamas started this, right? But the nuance is that people who haven't studied this conflict is that Hamas is the product of some oppression,
Hmm.
and it wouldn't exist, because basically Hamas is the successor to the PLO, which the PLO was very radical until they got, diplomatic. Well, it was like, okay, so more oppression came, more displacement from the West Bank and all of that. I'm not getting too deep into this, but that Hamas is the product of something. It is a reaction to something. It's not a preemptive strike. It's something. It's a reactive organization. And so, if you're going to dialogue, if you're going to have a dialogue about the Middle East, about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, you really have to catch this nuance. You can't have, and I'm just using this as an example. I'm not talking about that, but that when things like these happen that are emotionally charged, politically charged, that there's some real friction. In order to dialogue, you have to be willing to be intellectually honest about all sides of it. and like you said, seek to understand. So, with that being said, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, something. I just, I kind of just coined the term discussion in the way I was thinking about it, but the difference between dialogue and debate would probably be that's probably more nuanced. I like that better.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing, right? It's like within discussion, like discussion goes from like a cordial, a cordial exchange of ideas, or where like say like a forensic debate, right? Which a forensic debate is a debate that has ground rules,
Right.
and and so you have like a discussion, and it could be like where okay, we're just bantering back and forth, but then the discussion can be like just where I'm just seeking to steamroll your point, and to me, that's more onerous than debate
Yeah.
because there's the intellectual honesty is lost.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Um, okay, so let's nuance this a little bit. All right. So proselytizing, or someone trying to win, let's say someone trying to win you to Christ, or someone that thinks you're backslid
Yeah.
and they're trying to get you to see the light and to come back around. Um, yeah, is there even a starting point for dialogue with that kind of a conversation? I don't think there is.
No.
So I guess what I would say is like I get that. Like, if somebody's trying to make me become a vegan, let's just do it that way. So we take it out of the realm, right?
Yeah.
They can give me all their reasons why they think I should be a vegan, but I'm not going to give up meat. I'm just not going to do it.
Nope.
I was raised on a farm. What can I say? Or if somebody believes in a flat earth. Now, I might want to understand where they're coming from, but yeah, there's not going to be an openness to an exchange of ideas. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to give a couple of examples outside of religion. So, things that people are really passionate about, and they really think the world would be better if, everybody would follow this direction, be it Christian or Muslim or whatever religion, or, let's save the animals and, give the 2-finger salute to Tyson Chicken for their chicken farms
Yeah.
and how the animals are being treated. And let's go down the vegan path. But I'm talking about issues that have complexity or have a lot of complexity. I don't want to say those issues don't have complexity, but issues that are not like, because if somebody's trying to tell you, okay, Jesus Christ is Lord, you have to accept Jesus Christ as your savior, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
That's like a black and white issue, right? Like that's a binary issue.
Yep.
You are, you
Small
aren't. There's no complexity to it. Now we might get into complexity of Jesus exists as a historical person and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm talking about stuff like climate change. I'm talking about well, let me give you an example. The Republican Party. Now, I was not as active or visible as you were back in the day.
Yep.
As a conservative talk show host and all the stuff that you were doing. But let's just rewind the clock. Let's go back to the year 2000. Let's go back to the 90s, whatever. Because I remember the day I solidified myself as a conservative. Even though I was raised in a Barry Goldwater family.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in Reagan Republican family. I was Alex Keaton. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
From Family Ties. That was me. But I didn't really understand the issues. And I remember listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He must have been governor of California at the time. And he was speaking at the Republican National Convention. I want to say that was probably 2000. But you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
On the date.
Yeah.
And he laid out, I want to say, the 5 basic principles of conservatism and why he was a conservative. And I listened to him speak, and Arnold is very persuasive. He's a very smart guy. But things like smaller government, capitalism, strong national defense, At the time, I was very pro-life, and but those are issues. Though that's real politics. Those are policies. I mean, we can have the debate about capitalism versus
Yep.
socialism, and we can break it down into healthcare. Should we have a capitalistic healthcare system, or should we have a socialist healthcare system? Let's have that discussion. Let's have that dialogue. Let's have that debate.
Yep.
You know, even the pro-life, pro-choice thing. Let's have the
Yep.
debate, right? That is not the MAGA Republican Party.
No.
They are not willing to debate issues on the House floor. They're too busy insulting, bringing up insults and using whatever catchphrases, like Vivek Ramaswamy the other night in the Republican debate. I think I got his
Yep.
name right.
That's right.
He starts it out by saying, I don't even think we should have you. I think what was Chris Wallace, one of the moderators, is like, I don't even think we should have, MSNBC or Chris Wallace. They shouldn't, but we should have Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. Dude, that is complete cosplay to the base.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I
just like the way you phrased that. That was really good.
That's just throwing out a trope, or some of the stuff Lauren Boebert does, because I'm in her district, so I pay attention.
Yep.
It's cosplay. She was talking about some bill. I don't even remember I don't even know what it was. I don't know the context for it, but it was just this week, and she gets challenged by a Democratic congressperson who's saying the stuff the points you're making don't even exist in this bill.
Right.
Like, they aren't even part of this bill. And she lost her train of thought. She couldn't respond. She didn't have any answers. She had to get with her handlers to figure out how to answer it. So how are we supposed to solve very complex problems? I mean, this is probably the most complex time since World War II.
Yep.
With everything that's going on in the world, with Russia and the Ukraine, China and Taiwan, and what's happening now in the Middle East, coming out of a pandemic, inflation, housing prices. Like, we have some real problems in this country, and you've got one side of the aisle that isn't even coming to the table with ideas at all.
Right.
They're not even coming with ideas at all. So I guess what I'm saying is, and then that's being modeled in our culture. That's what we want in our culture.
Yep.
We just want someone on that side of the aisle, as far as I can tell. We just want someone who can own the libs and say the things out loud that we think inside of the bitterness of our own heart and experience.
Yep.
And belief system.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, I mean, what happened to the day when you could disagree passionately with your friends about an issue, talk about it over the dinner table, talk about it over a couple beers or whatever, and you're still close friends after that? It has no bearing whatsoever on how you feel about one another.
Yep.
Now it's just throwing insults at each other because they don't see things exactly the way you see things. So I think a conservative, this is just me, and I'm open to being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think a healthy conservative party, I don't like the two-party system much, but I think there should be a healthy conservative voice out there, right? That's speaking on the issues with real substance and real dialogue. As far as I can tell, that does not even exist today.
You're right.
So
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Here's the thing, that in order to have true dialogue, I said this before, I'm going to use this term a lot tonight, I could tell, intellectual honesty. That both sides have to come to the table with, okay, this is going to be an intentional, meaningful exchange of ideas, and we're going to weigh out the pros and the cons and the nuances of the finer points of both sides of the discussion. And that's discourse, because now we're actually trying to find common ground by discovering, understanding. But when your posture is, I have no meaningful policy, I have no meaningful solutions.
Hmm.
All I have is I need to silence this other voice.
There you go. That's the issue.
You know, in other words, I want to put you on shutdown corner, right? That and I will do whatever it takes. Like like I think about the New York Jets used to have a cornerback, Darrell Revis, right?
Yep.
And he called himself Revis Island because
Yep. I remember that.
you just weren't going to get an easy pass on him. Now, the thing about Darrell Revis is that if you look at him, his body of work, well, he was fast, he was strong, very athletic, could jump and all of that. But Darrell Revis knew how to nuance a foul. He knew how to do pass interference without getting called. Now, I'm not
Hmm.
saying this as an aspersion on him because everybody, in order for you to be a successful corner in the NFL, you're going to have to, be able to engage in a little subterfuge, that
Yeah.
gets past the
Yeah.
officials. Um, so, but then you have some people. Um, I forget who it was, but it was somebody on the Cowboys a couple of years ago, and this guy was the most penalized defensive back in the NFL. I can't think of his
Hmm.
name now, but
I don't know.
basically this guy was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna foul you. I don't care about the penalty. This is what it takes to stop you. So that's where today's Republican Party or today's conservative is. That they're like, I don't care if I get an interference call. I'm going to stop the pass. I'm not concerned with sportsmanship. I'm not concerned with fairness or anything like that. My thing is that I have to shut you down at all costs, even if that means doing something dirty, or even causing harm. You know, because now, well, let's take this back. I'm going to use another football analogy. Jack Tatum. You know, Jack Tatum was a dirty player,
Hmm.
and the culmination of that was what he did to Daryl Stingley from the New England Patriots. He hit him and paralyzed him.
Hmm.
Right. And the thing was, Jack Tatum was never repentant or anything like that for what he did. And so what I'm saying is that basically today's conservative movement is essentially the Jack Tatum of debate versus discourse. In other words, I don't care if I paralyze you. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not really cared about care. I'm not concerned about what harm I may cause to the game or the institution, if you will. I'm going to own you. I'm going to own you. So with that being said, that when we look at discussion versus dialogue, how do we have meaningful dialogue when the people who are setting the stage, who are quote unquote leaders, when they can't do that? So basically, society, humanity is sort of monkey see, monkey do. That's the
Hmm.
way we operate, and we will only rise to the level of our leadership. And this is why, I mean, I've said this before, and I do these classes on this and all that. That why leadership matters, because
Hmm.
people are only going to rise to the level of their charge, or the people who have charge over them. And if your leaders are dicks, if your leaders are unfriendly, hostile, if your leaders are opposed to meaningful dialogue, then that's the way you're going to be. You're only going to be as good as those. So one of the things that we need to do, Aaron, and this is I think this is a really good discussion, is that we need to drive this conversation more toward, okay, let's talk about the nuances of an issue. So like you use climate change, to get away from all the Middle East stuff, or the
Mhm.
flat Earth, or the moon landing, or UFOs, or Bigfoot. Any pick any one of those things, and you say, okay, one guy says, I think Bigfoot exists. Another guy says, well, I don't think Bigfoot exists. And the guy that thinks that Bigfoot does exist, he's going to say, well, here's the evidence. You know, we have these, they're grainy photographs, but we have that, we have, footprints in the mud and all of this other stuff. We have hair patches caught in trees that we can't identify the animal that it came from, all of these different things. And the other guy says, well, no, the photos that you had are grainy. The footprints that you found one footprint, but this is supposed to be a biped, so there should be two footprints, and the hair on the tree. Oh well, that could be a bobcat dragging a antelope into a tree, and so you have this dialogue where neither one is trying to steamroll the other one. They're seeking to understand where the other one is coming from. And I think that really what we need to do, this is what desperately needs to happen, and I'll kick this back to you after this, is that speaking to understand, or first of all, and I think Shannon had mentioned this in the chat, that people don't want to understand, right? First of all, I think that in order to foster dialogue, we need to say, okay, we have two ears and one mouth. Now, you and I both used to preach this all the time, right? God gave us one mouth and two ears so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Well, that was a nice preaching trope, but there's actually some truth to that. So
Mhm.
we should, take our foot off the speaking pedal and probably put more onto the listening pedal and pay more attention. And then somebody else has said this in the chat that not listening to respond, or
Yeah.
not listening with the intent of waiting to respond.
Yeah.
In other words, let's actually process this. So how do we process that? How do we, and I'm going to ask you to put on your professional clinician hat, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
say, how do I put myself in a posture of understanding, so that
Yep.
I can receive instead of just responding?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question. I noticed my buddy Benny here. He raised his hand and then asked a question. He says, "Are not both sides both sides of the aisle playing dirty and only concerned about themselves and not the people or the welfare of our country?" Um, I think there's truth to that statement.
Yeah.
Definitely, I don't think either side of the aisle is seriously concerned about people or the welfare of the country. So, valid point. But I feel a little bit. I want to address this, and Benny, you're free to speak to this in the comments. I hear this, what I would call a false equivalence, when we point out the extremists in the MAGA Republican Party, and I'm talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, um, and the kingpin himself. Um, I don't see the same kind of rhetoric coming from the other side. I don't hear it. I don't hear the same stupid, petulant middle school tropes.
Mm.
I hear Jamie Raskin speaking intelligently. I hear, I think Gavin Newsom speaks intelligently on issues
Adam
and
Schiff.
speaks to
Yeah.
issues. Adam Schiff, yeah, exactly. So that's what I see coming from even AOC. As much as people hate AOC, listen to her. She knows her stuff. She comes prepared. She presents facts. She can craft an argument. So I don't see any equivalence whatsoever between the MAGAs and the Democrats.
Right.
So I would just, before I answer your question, Derrick, just say with to Benny, like, what examples of playing dirty that would compare to a Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Lauren Boebert, etc. Specific examples are coming from the left, because it seems to me, whether we agree with their positions or not, they're at least bringing substance to the issue and talking about the issue. I don't see a lot of just hurling insults and throwing out, key words that have been on Fox News that are going to lather up the base. So I'd be interested in specific examples to see whether or not I'm perceiving incorrectly when I say I think there's a false equivalence out there when we say it's on both sides. So I just want to say that. Now, let's look under the hood, because you bring up a great point. Like, at the end of the day, we get in a democratic system, republic system. I mean, it's not like we're just stuck with whatever dictator was born and whatever mental illness they had. I mean, there are substantive people in the Republican Party. Liz Cheney was substantive, right? Yep. Mitt Romney. I think you could even argue to a certain degree Mitch McConnell.
Yep.
They are on the outs. They're on the outs. Ken Buck from my own state announced he was not going to run for re-election because the party was given over to a bunch of hooligans.
Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. And so those people can't get elected. So at the end of the day, as much as I agree with what you're saying, if our leaders can't get it together, how are we supposed to get it together? But at least in that sense, those leaders, or what's happening in that party, is a reflection of the people. So then we have to ask ourselves, what is it? Why is it that they want to Jack Lambert other voices, silence other voices? I mean, you can't tell me you believe in the Constitution. You believe in, a government. What is it? By the people, of the people, for the people, for the people, but by the people, of the people. I always get the prepositions confused.
You got them all.
And then why wouldn't you want Muslims represented in Congress? Why wouldn't you want atheists represented in Congress? Why wouldn't you want everyone of every ethnic background to have a voice if it's going to be democratic? But anyway, set that aside. So looking under the hood, I think there's two problems. There's two problems, I think, that are on the deeper level that we don't see, but it's really driving what's happening and what's going on, really the thrust behind it. Two things. The first thing I would say, and this goes back directly to your point about wanting to silence other voices, is something called the scapegoat mechanism, which I'll come back and explain. And the second thing is that we do not realize, and I did a video on this that I uploaded today, that most of us, well, all of us to a certain degree, our brains are wired not to see the world as it is, but to see it as we are and conform our beliefs or our perceptions of reality to our belief system about reality. So let's take on the first one. Scapegoat mechanism. So when we went on lockdown, what was it? 30 days to slow the curve or whatever back in March of 2020, middle of March 2020. I posted a video on my YouTube channel. I'm not sure if it's still up. I think it might have gotten taken down because I was talking about the pandemic and how that was getting flagged and whatever. But it might still be up. But I said that this was my fear about this pandemic, in that video specifically. I said, my fear is that this is going to arouse the scapegoat mechanism within humanity. So for people that don't understand the scapegoat mechanism, it's part of a theory of Rene Girard's that says that whenever people's lives get too uncomfortable, whenever there's too much tension and life is hard to cope with, that human beings individually and collectively don't know what to do with those feelings and begin to look for someone else to be punished for what's happening.
Yep.
So this is why, this is kind of why football, soccer, I don't know if people are as passionate. I suppose some people are as passionate about basketball and hockey, definitely hockey
Yeah.
here and basketball here in Colorado right now. But particularly a more violent sport like football can be cathartic because if we identify with the team and we watch other players being violent with one another, it gives us sort of an outlet for our own violence. We can go to the game, we can scream, we can holler, we can yell at the TV. It gives us an outlet. But when there is worldwide stress, like we saw in the pandemic, and this is what I said, we're seeing worldwide stress. And so here's what I predict. I said this back in like the middle of March 2020. I said, I predict that we are going to see rioting in the streets. I predict that we are going to see an increase in gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
And it would not surprise me if eventually we ended up in another world war. Because this situation that we're facing is going to put so much pressure on people, and they're not going to know what to do with it, and they're going to want someone to blame. And when they identify the someone that they want to blame, they're going to want that someone to be punished.
Yep.
And yeah, I think I'll save that for another episode because I was going to get back to the Middle East thing, but I think we're seeing that. I think the idea is part of the reason that to answer the question connected to the question. Part of the reason that we have a hard time having dialogue is that we're so uncomfortable in our lives, we're so unhappy in our lives, even if we don't admit it to ourselves. And we genuinely believe, a lot of people genuinely believe that it is a certain ideology that's causing their problem. And people that hold that ideology then therefore are the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to eradicate them, because if we can eradicate them, then the world will be fine. And this is exactly what's going on in America today. You have to have an enemy in a nation, right? So we had the Nazis in World War II, and then we had Russia and the Soviet Union in the Cold War, and then we had the War on Terror, right? So it was the terrorists. But now what we have is it's the liberals.
Yeah.
It's the communists and the socialists that are trying to take over our country. That's why you're suffering. Or Trump in 2016. It's the Mexicans coming across the border.
Yep.
It's the immigrants coming. They're taking your jobs. They're raping your women. They're bringing fentanyl across the border. And I'm not denying that stuff. The fentanyl issue is not real. I'm not saying that. But do you see how they were scapegoating?
Yep.
And now it's your fellow Americans. Right. I drive by 3 houses that fly a flag that says "fuck Joe Biden" and "fuck you if you voted for him."
Yep.
So I think the scapegoating mechanism speaks specifically to what you were saying about we got to silence these voices.
Yep.
We got to shut them down. So I think that's working, and people don't realize what they're doing. It's completely unconscious, but it's coming out. The second thing that I said was that we tend to see the world not as it is, but as we are. And this is just basic neuroscience.
Yep.
So I'll give you a perfect example of this. I'm told, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but my wife used to be. She married me and 25 years of just speaking English. She lost a lot of it. But I'm told when you read in Spanish, the punctuation comes at the beginning of the sentence. Now that makes sense because if you think about it, if there's going to be a question mark or an exclamation point at the end of a sentence, how do you know when you're reading it to read it as a question or as an exclamation?
Right.
So when you read in English, your brain is really good at recognizing patterns, so you anticipate. You're actually able to predict, if you will, the punctuation before it shows up, because your mind is always sort of forward thinking.
Yep.
And anticipating this, thinking in a pattern. This is how the pattern is supposed to be, and as long as it follows the pattern, it's good. This is why the old Energizer Bunny, for those of you that are old enough to remember this, man, I'm really going back and dating myself. This is why the old Energizer Bunny commercial was so powerful, because you would be, yeah, exactly. It would start out with like a Star Wars battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader or something, and your brain is already predetermining how the commercial is going to go, and then all of a sudden it gets interrupted by this pink bunny running across the screen banging its cymbals. It was to disrupt the pattern so that it would get your attention, versus like a Chevrolet commercial or any of the other ads that were on TV, right? So they've done a lot of interesting studies on this, and one of the things that and I had this proven to me in real time, but there's a group out there who have done studies where literally you can watch children playing basketball and miss something on the screen. I don't want to give it away in case we ever decide to use it. We can be that. You miss something on the screen completely and totally miss it. You don't even see it. It's not there. And then they tell you, did you see this happening on the court while kids were passing the basketball? Now you know to accept it, or to expect it.
Right.
To anticipate it. So they replay it, the same video, because I've done this demonstration and test over and over and over again in seminars that I used to do when I was doing more of them, years ago.
Yeah.
And it's there. But you could see it. I could watch the video, and because I knew it was there, I could see it going on the whole time. And I would ask an audience, how many of you saw this going on the basketball court? And maybe one or two people would raise their hands. Maybe. But the vast majority of them are confused. What are you talking about? And then I rewind it, and now everybody sees it, and they're just stunned. I remember the first time I got introduced to this, it was in an NLP class. Daryl Carlson, probably, if he's still on, he could probably remember this. But they showed us a slide that had a sentence where the sentence structure was very subtly tweaked, so that you didn't read one of the words that was in the sentence. And they asked you, what does that sentence say? And everybody in the class said what they expected the sentence to say. And they said, you missed the extra word. And they told us what the extra word was. And Derrick, I'm telling you, man, it was like that thing manifested, like it got beamed there by some kind of Star Trek. Like it literally, where there was a blank, it literally appeared within my perception. It was there objectively the whole time, but my brain wouldn't let me see it. So when it comes to basic perceptions, our brains completely edit or delete information that's out there. Because it violates our expectations of what's supposed to be there. That's how strongly we can be committed to our worldview and not be able to see someone else's point of view. Because if that can happen with stuff that's objectively there and can be objectively shown and proven, then how much more do we do that with stuff that we're so persuaded, we're so certain of our position? So I would say, and I took way too long to answer this question.
You're good.
I would say that if we are going to take an understanding posture, there has to be this level of like humility, right? There has to be this level of acceptance of my own human limitations and the limitations of my own viewpoint, and that maybe I don't know it all, and maybe I don't know what I don't know, and maybe I can learn something from you. Like approaching each person as someone I can learn from. It doesn't mean I have to accept your argument.
Right.
Let's say a street preacher that's out on the streets, telling everybody they're going to hell. I mean, I can look at that person and at least open myself to the posture. What can I learn from this person?
Right.
It's not unlike your seafood that you talked about, that, before you get into a conflict, ask yourself 100 questions. What's he doing? Trying to get you to have this openness, right? And so I think having this openness and this dare I say, lack of certainty about things
Yeah.
is key to if we're going to have real understanding and dialogue. So anyway, I said a
Yeah.
ton there, so I'll give you your
Uh,
space now.
Dude, it's like one of the things that I've learned from you is not to cling so tightly to certainty, right? That there are things that you have to understand that you're not going to understand, right?
Mhm.
Now, here's my thing. This is my caveat. I want to understand things. I'm an engineer, so I believe
Sure.
in physical science, and so I think that given a sufficiently long timeline, I'm going to figure it out, right? Somebody's going to figure it out.
Right.
But in the meantime, while I don't understand, I'm okay with the mystery. So this is something that I've learned from you because I'm able to step back and say, okay, I don't understand this, and I don't have a ready explanation for this, but I'm willing to concede that there is something that's beyond my understanding, and I can rock with that. So that's something that you taught me because like I was veering toward materialism,
Mhm.
right? And I can say that with all honesty that you rescued me from that materialistic viewpoint. And so I'm like there are things what I understand. What I don't understand, I'm okay with embracing the mystery. Now, what I'm saying about this is that when we have this dialogue, right? Dialogue says, okay, for someone like me who is, humanistic, that tends toward the materialistic, right? Dialogue says that I can hear what someone like Aaron Tomlinson has to say. And that I'm not so yoked to this viewpoint that I can hear what you have to say. And that allows me to be in a posture of growth. So now I'm not just responding. I'm not looking to respond just to respond. I'm looking to understand before I respond.
Mhm.
And so this is a really key thing because I think that what happens is and I say this to people all the time, do not get galvanized in your thinking. Do not get hardened in your thinking to the point where you say, okay, this is it. I know it all. I don't need to know anything else. This is it. I'm good. Right? At some point, and I say this all the time, that in order for me to have gone from Christian pastor, bishop, apostle,
Mhm.
theologian to atheist, I had to have an open mind.
Absolutely.
I had
Absolutely.
to put myself in a position that so watch this. What makes a scientific theory scientific is that it's falsifiable. In other words, it can be proven false. Now, if it's proven false, then the next thing is that something has a superior hypothesis has to replace it, right? You can't just say something, you can't falsify something without something superior, right? So when we look at when we look at information that runs contrary to our personal belief system, we have to ask ourselves: have I made what I believe in to be falsifiable? And then this is the difference between science and religion, right? Religion says that what I believe is not falsifiable. In other words, you can't call it wrong,
Good point.
right?
Really good
Because
point.
if you call it wrong, then you're basically heretic. You're a heretic or you're an apostate.
Yeah.
You're blaspheming. But
Mhm.
on the flip side, if you say, okay, I hold out to the possibility that what I believe in could be falsified. Now you say, okay, now I'm placing my belief into the sphere of public discourse.
Hmm.
And I'm allowing people to hold this idea that I hold to be true and some opposing idea at the same time.
Hmm.
And in order to really have discourse, you have to be willing to hold two ideas,
Right.
juxtapose the two, and
Right.
say, okay, I'm not going to referee which is right or which is wrong, but just that I'm going to juxtapose these two ideas on their merits and say, okay, based on my and this is the other thing, my own understanding of logic and reason. Because I can't say that I'm the ultimate arbiter of logic and reason,
Right.
right? So this is something that based on what I've heard, based on what I've observed, based on the evidence that I have at my disposal, I can say that this, in my opinion, right now, works for me.
Hmm.
And I think that's an intellectually honest. I said I was
Hmm.
going to say this a lot, an intellectually honest position, because now I'm
Hmm.
saying, okay, yeah, this is what I hold to be true, but
Right.
if something happens that is a superior hypothesis, then I'm willing to consider that, or I'm willing to entertain that. And so again, I'm going to say this, and I'll stop. That when when people come to me and say, okay, you need to consider this, you need to
Hmm.
take this into consideration. Okay, what I'm looking at now is, have I considered this in the past?
Hmm. Yeah.
Have I taken this into consideration? Because if I haven't, then it is incumbent upon me as a rational, logical being. It is incumbent upon me to consider this new information, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be intellectually honest about this discussion in order to have a discourse, right? I have to consider this. Now, the flip side of it is that if I have heard this before, I've already considered this, or this is where I've come from, and now I have evolved to this point. I'll tell people in a minute, I don't need to consider this information, because this is somewhere where I've already been. I've already um, I've staked a claim here, but I moved on.
Yeah. You're you're getting to another root of the issue though. Like, what's under the hood, or what's,
Yeah,
another root of the issue is that so much conversation is only about persuasion. So what's the outcome? So I hear what you're saying, like, have I considered this before? Um and if I have, then I'm not obligated to change my
yeah.
position or listen to you.
I
And
don't need to go back to where I've already been.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I get it. But if you think about it, that's still built around a framework of you have to think like me. And I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying the person
Sure.
that's saying, have you considered? It's like, I guess what I'm saying with dialogue is dialogue should be that we are able to persuasively talk about what we believe, but we can handle the fact that you also are persuasive, aren't that you aren't persuaded, because the goal of dialogue is not persuasion. That's the goal of debate,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
The goal of dialogue is just an exchange of ideas. And if we
Leave it.
outframe it to, we're just sharing different ideas, we're just having discourse here, I'm sharing my worldview, you're sharing your worldview, and neither one of us have framed the outcome for the conversation that you have to think and believe just like me. And so I think that really, like what's the desired outcome here? Like, why are people, for example, coming at you or coming at me and trying to get us to consider our past things that we have already considered? Like, why do they even care? Like, so dialogue allows both things to be held equally. So I'll give you an example. This used to work better when gas was cheaper, but people will judge even on issues that aren't complex or have no bearing on the world or society at large. So let's talk about vacations. All right. So I'm going to go on vacation, and this might be an argument that a couple has. And I want to fly. Let's say I'm going to go to Orlando. I want to fly, and my wife wants to take a road trip. And we get in a big fight about it. And she says, it's going to cost us too much money to fly. Now, I'm not convinced you can do a road trip cheaper than you can fly now, but back in the day, you used to be able to, theoretically, at least. It's going to cost us too much money. Yeah, but I don't want to spend all that time on the road. Or, yeah, we could get there, but if we drove, we would get more quality time together to just be together and hang out and talk. Or let's do it this way. I remember I knew some people, they went on vacation together and they hated it. And it was two couples went on vacation together, and both of them complained about the other. One complained, I don't ever want to go on vacation with them again because all they want to do is just sit around the pool or sit on the beach and drink, pina coladas. Yeah. And then the other one said, my God, they didn't even rest on that vacation. I need a vacation from my vacation after going with them because all they wanted to do was go ziplining and parasailing and touring and hiking. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so people can't even have dialogue about that. They'll judge. Like, so for my example of do we drive or do we fly? Well, what's more valuable to you, time or money, right? Like if you could save money driving, which again, I'm not convinced you can now, but back in the day, if you could save money driving, and we judge, oh, what a waste of money. Or I got one for you. Why would you go and spend $400 on dinner? Why would you do that for two people?
Yeah.
That's a waste of money. We could have used that money and bought a new TV.
Sure.
Okay. One person wants the memory of the experience of having gone to this restaurant, and they're probably a foodie like I am.
Yep.
And the other one sees that as a complete waste of money because you just took that money and threw it away, and now we don't have anything to show for it.
But wait a second. Here's the thing. You're what you're talking about is an experience, right? And this is another discussion altogether. We get caught up in stuff, in substance, right? That we ignore the experience. So
right.
It's like if you go to a restaurant and let's say you spend $500. Yep. Okay, this $500 is you've had an experience. You've had something that transcends the ordinary, right? Mm. And if that's the case, then that's okay. I mean, it's like if you spend $500 on just stuff, right? Okay, a steak dinner, right? But let's say someone comes in and they hand carve the filet in front of you, and they cook it in front of you, and there's this whole experience of how the filet came to be. This is all.
See, we're too much alike. We're too much alike. You're.
I know, man. Because see, here's the thing: you and I, we could take our significant other to a restaurant and have a 5-star experience, and we could spend $1,000 between the two of us, and we're okay with that because it's the experience and not the substance. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm taking your thunder.
No, I love it. This is great. This is a great illustration because the point I'm making is at the end of the day, it's all about whatever someone's values are,
Right.
right? Like you and I value the food. I mean, you're talking, dude, you're talking like they're cutting the fillet right in front of you, and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm there. I can see myself there. I can even imagine. I can imagine the ambiance. I can imagine the setting of the restaurant. I can smell it. I can taste it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm there, right? Other people be like, oh, that's a complete waste of money because we need to, you know what I mean? But they're not objectively, one's not better than the other. It's just that we all have our preferences about things. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, so why can't both be true? Like, why can't, to go back, is time more important than money? It depends on what you think, and it depends on the context of it. And it can be, both can be true at the same time. For me, time can be more valuable to me than money. And of course, I know you can make the
Yeah.
argument that, money's a renewable resource, but time isn't. But for someone else that, maybe grew up in poverty, money is more important to them
Yeah.
than the time. Neither one is right or wrong. Neither one is objectively, this is how it should be.
Right.
And so that, so you see how I'm bringing that into
Yeah.
the discussion, like the dialogue that we're having. People, we expect other people to be like us, and we'll do that with giving advice, you know like, and I try to be good at this. Like, if you come to me with something, for example, hey, I got this going on, what do you think? 9 times out of 10, I'm asking you questions.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you what to do. 9 times out of 10, I'm saying, well, why is this important to you? Or how is that a problem for
Yeah.
you? Or how do you feel about that? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm taking my belief system, my preferences, my values, my thoughts and understanding, and I'm applying them to you, and they may not work for you.
But see, and so here's the thing. This the beauty of me and you is that we always listen to understand, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like, okay, so I'm asking you, have you considered this or have you thought about this? And you're asking me the same kind. So you're reciprocating that energy, right?
Right.
So we're asking each other questions about things. And this, Aaron, I think that this is the magic. This is the sweet spot, right? If we as humans that we say, okay, I want to ask the question, okay, why do you believe this? Why do you
Hmm.
want this? Why do you like this? What is it that you're hoping to achieve from this? I'm coming to this asking questions, legitimate questions, not where I'm trying to ask the question to forward my personal agenda, but I really want to understand. And so again, now for all of you who are listening, this is something that's like that. I think that this is the thing that makes Aaron and I's relationship special, is that we're always asking, okay, what does this mean to you?
Right.
Why is this important to
Exactly.
you? And so we
Exactly.
ask each other this question all the time. So watch this. This is the money shot. This is the money shot. If every conversation that we have, that we come to this from the standpoint of, why do you believe this? Why is this important to you? And so shameless plug right here. Next week I'm kicking off my next masterclass session.
No, plug it,
and,
man.
and
No way.
I'm going to be talking about core values, finding your why.
Hmm.
Okay, and why is this important? Because if you can find your why, then you're able to articulate your why to the people who are around you, and then you're able to once you have your why, you're able to articulate that. You're able to present something to someone who doesn't know you or doesn't understand you, and they're able to tap into why it is that you believe what you believe. Okay, so here's the thing, Aaron. You and I, Aaron and Derrick, we can sit down and explain very concisely why we do what we do. What is
Hmm.
our why? When we get up out of bed in the morning, what is it about what we know that drives what we do?
Right.
Okay, so not everybody has that, but this is the thing, that if you're starting to talk about dialogue versus discussion, I think that a very candid discussion about why is important, because
Yeah.
now you're saying, okay, I'm not trying to impose my will here. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to share what I believe and what I know, but I'm doing this from the standpoint of I want to understand and know where you're coming from.
Hmm.
And that's what I think, if we can tie this up into a bow,
Yeah.
that is the thing. Okay, what is it that you're trying to convey? I want to understand it. I may not agree with it. I may not be, or it may be, okay, I don't agree with it, but it's something that I can consider,
Hmm.
right? And if I can get to that, now I can say, okay, I'm listening to understand. I'm participating in this, and that's what I guess, like, that's what I'm what I'm trying to get at is, how do we listen to each other from the standpoint of I'm not trying to figure out what my response is going to be. I'm not
Right.
trying to listen to you to figure out what my position is relative to yours. I simply want to understand.
Yeah. The why thing is it, right? Like that's the whole thing. So like, why was that person, coming to you and saying, "Have you considered this yet?"
Mhm.
Why do people? Is it because they get angry at some of your posts because it challenges their beliefs? Well, welcome to the real world. But why? There's how many other people that think, like, let's just take the atheism issue, where you're posting things to make people think, um and somebody takes offense at that. Well, you're not the first atheist.
Right.
This isn't a new idea.
Oh,
So why do they feel the need to come at you over it? You see what I'm
yeah.
saying? um why do we feel the need to persuade other people? um and so I think you really hit on something powerful there, identifying the why, identifying the values, and things like that. But I would say this: I think the key, because I had to learn to do this as a counselor, because you'll hear a lot of things, especially when you're first starting out, especially when I was first starting out, because I was still pastoring. You'll hear a lot of things that contradict your own sense of right and wrong, or how things should be, right?
Mhm.
And you're not allowed to impose your belief system on the person that you're doing therapy with. That's not therapy. That's something else. That's religion.
Yeah.
Um, and so you have to maintain a curious posture. And so what if we could access curiosity? Maybe that would help us listen more. Maybe that would help us seek to understand more. That when we come up against something, particularly if we can recognize within ourselves, I'm triggered by this, and then be curious even about ourselves. I'm curious why this triggers me so much. I'm curious why this person thinks this way. I'm curious what the outcome of this kind of thinking would be. I'm curious how this is working for this person in their life. I'm curious why this person has this idea or this belief, or why they're acting a certain way. Again, it goes back to your Sifu, right?
Mhm.
In order to ask 100 questions, what do you have to do? You had to access a state of curiosity.
Yep.
You told that story. For those that haven't heard it, I'll share what I remember. But guy cuts in front of you in line or something, and you're like pissed off, and then you're like, maybe he's in a hurry to get home to a sick child.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't get laid this week. Maybe,
Yep.
start asking. But in order to ask 100 questions, You have to access that state of curiosity. So if we could on purpose access that state of curiosity more, and maybe even realize when we're getting triggered, when we're thinking about our argument and framing it up, when we're pushing back, and there are times to push back. This isn't like a law for all times. There are times to tell people to fuck off, and
Yep.
there are times to push back, and there are times to
Yeah.
hold your ground. I absolutely believe that. And there are times to, speak your beliefs, your truth with persuasion. I'm all for that. And don't take shit from people. I'm all for that. But when you're with a friend or you're with a loved one or you're with somebody, you don't really, there's no reason to have an axe to grind with them.
Yep.
And you're getting triggered. Maybe that's a sign that you need to move over into a state of curiosity. That's what I would say.
I got to share something with you that we were talking about my seafood,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a conversation with him this week. Now, mind
Mm.
you, we haven't talked. We haven't had an
Interesting.
actual conversation in about 10 years.
Oh, that's so interesting. So interesting. I bring that up, that
Yeah.
illustration twice, 3 times tonight.
So he came up with this thing. He said, and I'm quoting him because I told him I was going to quote him. So Brad, if you're listening, this is your moment, right? He said that we need to see ourselves as cavemen in lab coats.
Mm.
And I thought that that was one of the most profound things that I ever heard because we are at our core a base being. We react to our environment.
Wow.
But when we take the lab coat and put it on, we say, okay, I'm going to force myself to subordinate my base instincts to some rational thought.
Wow.
And that was, dude, that was like so powerful.
Yeah, it's profound.
Being a caveman in a lab coat. So here's the thing. So in order to have discourse,
Mm-hmm.
I need to subordinate my base instincts. There are some things that I'm going to have to place under, as we used to say in Christian ministry, to bring that thought into captivity,
Yeah.
right? And say, okay, there is a higher thought, there is a higher reasoning, there is a higher being that I need to apply to this because I
Mm-hmm.
know what my base being is like. Like for me, I like pleasure. You know, I like booze. I like sex. you know, there are things that I like,
Mm-hmm.
but if I'm governing myself by that, then that means that reason kind of goes out the window. But
Yeah.
but I have to say, okay, I am a reasonable or reasoning rational being.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I have to put on the lab coat and I have to take all of these things that are base about me and subordinate those to my logical reasoning mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start talking about having discourse, right? See, here's the thing. Discussion appeals to our base instinct. The need to be
Mm.
right. That's a base instinct, right? So I'm trying to steamroll every thought, every opinion that is contrary to my base instinct. But when I put on the lab coat, I say, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and understand that this information that's coming into me from another direction, that maybe this is good, that maybe this is right. And so I tell everybody all the time that when I came to be an atheist, that's how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take some information from someplace else and juxtapose that with what I knew and said, okay, which of these two holds the greater value? that
Mhm.
if I'm putting them into a T ledger or Franklin ledger, and I say which
Mhm.
one makes the most sense, that's
Mhm.
how I got to where I am.
Mhm.
So
I think I hit a wall, man. I think I've been feeling so much better. Thanks everybody that's reached out and checked on me and stuff. I was so sick, dude.
I'm glad
It
that you're
was
better. I mean, here's the thing: the last couple of weeks, you've looked great, right? But what I see today is like there's more fullness in your cheeks, right? So that
yeah.
means you're eating good.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I'm happy for that.
I'm really, I mean, except for, that little bit of whatever that hangs on, occasional coughing up something or something. But, I haven't coughed tonight. I'm not taking any medicine, finally, thank God. Last couple days, but especially today, I've felt, back to my normal self, physically at least. I've been catching up this week because I didn't do anything for 3 weeks or a month.
Yep.
So I know a lot of people have messaged me. Um, and if I didn't get back with you, some of you are on here tonight commenting. If I didn't get back with you, please give me some time and grace because I've just been catching up from everything. But other than that, I feel great. But all that to say, I did just hit a wall, man. So I'm
No,
gonna have
listen,
to,
and
I'm gonna have to call
I
it a
want to
night.
give you a specific shout out while we're here, right? Because you
Uh,
shared something with me, and I'm going to share with our audience that your Sunday message
yeah,
pulled a lot of private messages,
it did.
right? And so
Mm,
I want to say that if you have a yin for the metaphysical, for the mystical, then you need to be listening to Aaron every Sunday when he does his show. Because this is something that if this is in your wheelhouse,
yeah.
this is going to help you grow. It's going to help you process things. And Aaron, the one thing that I always say about you is that you make the metaphysical and the mystical practical. That
Mhm.
okay, this is something that I can apply to my day-to-day life. And that's the thing that, like I said, when there are other people that do this and they get all metaphysical and they get all spiritual and they get all and it's like, okay, how do I apply this to my life? But in your case, you're giving people principles, you're giving people practical examples of how they can apply it to their lives, and that, my friend, my brother, is powerful.
Thank you, man. That really, really, really means a lot to me. I really appreciate you giving me that plug and sharing that. And um, yeah, that just leaves me humbled. And thank you.
Oh, dude, because like me, I'm like I'm very practical. Okay,
Yes,
how can I apply this in my day to day
yes,
life? And so
absolutely.
everything that I do is geared towards something practical. But what I'm saying about you is that you take spirituality, something that is inherently not practical,
Exactly. You're exactly right about
and
that.
making it practical and useful, tangible, measurable, and repeatable. And
100%.
so that, my brother, I salute you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And so talk more about this masterclass. I wasn't sure that you were,
No, I'm
I didn't know you were starting that again. Or if you told me, you have to forgive me. I was
Well, no,
probably
no.
on.
We talked about it, but I'm going to kick it off again next week, and basically the premise of it is um, finding your why, and the subtitle is understanding your core values, because in the previous masterclass we talked about unpacking yourself, right? Because if you don't understand who you are, there's no way you could build core values around that. Now, so now we said, okay, there's some understanding about self awareness, about self realization, self actualization, all of these things, and we've unpacked that. So now we're going to talk about core values. And basically, so we've laid a foundation, we poured the concrete. Now we're going to start putting some studs up in this and start framing it, right? And start building around that, because once you
Yeah.
understand your why, then you understand, why am I getting out of bed every day?
So let me ask you some questions. Is it, but people can take this as a standalone, right?
Yep.
Like they don't have to have laid the foundation
Nope.
with the previous course. They can take it as a
Yep.
standalone thing, and they'll be fine. They won't be
Yep.
lost or left behind. And then are you charging for this or?
Well, there's most of the content is going to be free, but there's going to be some advanced content that
Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah, but this one they can get in on and like
Yeah,
wet their feet, see if this is for them. They can take it totally free,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Can they catch the last class? Was it recorded or stored anywhere, or
I
is
I
it?
have I recorded all but one of those. So if anyone wants to see the previous master class, inbox me, and I'll send you the links.
Yeah, so they need to inbox you. So if they're watching on YouTube and they want to take the class, they need to find you on
Yep,
Facebook and message you on Facebook. Okay.
absolutely.
And if they want to sign up for this class, they do that by messaging you also, or is there a different way for them to
Well,
do
what
that?
I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link out for the Zoom class. It's not going to be on Facebook Live, and all you have to do is just basically plug in.
So if they find you on Derrick Day Media or your Derrick Day personal
Yep,
page, which it's going to be public, then they can join in on that. So
exactly.
that's really cool. That's really really cool. And when is it again?
It'll be starting next Wednesday.
Next
Yeah,
Wednesday. So next Wednesday, meaning 5 days from
yeah,
now,
5 days
or
from now.
okay,
Yep.
all right, great. Awesome. So somebody asked on here, where can I see Aaron? Where can I catch Aaron's show? So I stream it on my Facebook. I stream it to a private Facebook group. So unless you're in that group, you can't see it because I set my own Facebook page to private. But you can catch it on my YouTube channel. So you can put in my name, Aaron Tomlinson, and the name of my YouTube channel is Conscious Spirituality. That's the name of it for it right now. So put in Aaron Tomlinson, Conscious Spirituality, and it should come right up in the search engine on YouTube. And it's Sunday mornings live, but of course it gets saved on the YouTube platform.
Yep.
Uh, or if you want to join Native Atheist, my Facebook group, it's New Day Global
Yep.
is the name of the Facebook group. Just send a request to join, and then make sure you answer the questions, because if we get a request where the questions aren't answered, we just don't approve it.
Yep.
But then there's other stuff that I'm doing, and we'll be doing more on that particular page, so you can see all the stuff I'm doing. So thanks for asking about that. All right, man.
Yeah, and so also, I'm going to put Aaron on the spot here for all that are watching. Is that we're gonna do some master class and teachings together
Yep.
that kind of dovetail the metaphysical, the spiritual, um,
Yep.
the mystical into the practical, and we're going to do all of these things together. So just stay tuned. Keep
Yeah.
watching Freology, because there's all kinds of things that we're working on together that you guys want to be plugged into. This is going to help you.
Yeah, something that we've talked about, just to let people know what we've talked about, but behind the scenes, is how can we blend, because I when I say I'm not an atheist, I cringe because I don't want people to associate. I mean, God is such a problematic word, right?
Yep.
So that's why I harp on in my videos scientific materialism. And so scientific materialism says, that everything that exists objectively out there and can be observed, measured, and repeated. And I'm not sure. I'm not persuaded that that's the case. And so what I present is that there are non-physical aspects of reality. There are hidden occult powers within us that we can tap into and that we can access and use. And so we're trying to figure out how to blend it. Derrick, you're definitely more on, like you said, the practical side, and the engineering side of things, right?
Yep.
And so how do we blend those two things in some of the stuff that we're doing? So the classes that we'll do will be fun.
Yeah.
As we blend and kind of bring those two worlds together, which is what we do, right? I mean, you and I come from two different worlds. We've talked about that. We
Yep.
completely different worlds, but we're able to bring it together with some synergy and make something wonderful out of it. So, so I think it's good for us to be talking about what's coming down the pike.
Yep. Absolutely. So with that being said, man, you want to go ahead and do the.
No, you came up with a better closing last time. Like you nailed it. I don't know if you remember. I might have to go back and watch it, but I was just like, oh man, that's got to be our new slogan or our new close or something. Do you remember what it was last week?
No, I don't. I actually don't, man.
I don't either.
But we talked about growing in real time. That's been our tagline.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending the time with us. Thank you for growing in real time with us. Um, and that's the thing. So now I'm going to have to go back and look at the closing from the last show.
Yeah, because it was fire, man. It was good. We gotta do that. I was thinking the same thing. Got to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Love you. Thanks, guys, for watching. Sorry we didn't get more into the comments and stuff, but appreciate everybody for the comments and watching us, and appreciate you, Derrick.
Yep. I appreciate you too. Love you, man.
Love you too,
All
man.
right. Talk to y'all later.